it gets out or if you give it away as a souvenir.
Right.
And whatever load you're going to have for your fruit.
Yeah. And everything pretty much resets automatically for the act, which is something I like too, because I would typically do this 3 or 4 times a night. So the regular standard deck goes over here in this pocket, too. And then I put the work into the lemon.
Yeah, all right. Let's
into the orange.
Into the lemon or orange, because you could use just about any lemon, lime, orange, anything that's kind of that same form of fruit.
Yeah.
So what's the work?
So basically, I cut what I call a star trap. So and you know, in the beginning, I was very precious, and I used an X-Acto knife or something like that. But nowadays, for practicality, I've just gotten so used to doing this. I'll just take my knife and I'll stick it in and just make a cut, right? And then I'll go the opposite way and just kind of make a little plus sign, right? And that's pretty much all it is, right? And then you take a Sharpie, and you take a Sharpie and just kind of shove it down in there, and you're done, right? And then you'll notice that you can actually push that back together, and it pretty much heals itself up. You know, if you were to look at that or casually examine it, I even hand it to the spectator during it, and just by looking at it, you can't tell that it's been opened, which I think is kind of cool. And that goes in my front pants pocket over here so I can load it later. And that goes back here. And also next to the pen is where the flashlight lives. That lives up here too. And this is on the table. You can carry this on with you. And the beer can be on the table, or you can walk in with it, however you see fit for that. And you walk on with your thumb tip.
Cool. All right. So that's actually pretty simple preparation, but again, pocket management is key.
Yes.
Right, isn't it? And I noticed that when you're loading things on one side, you have things that feel different. You know, so you've got a watch and you've got a rolled up bill over there.
Feels different.
Feels completely
I've got
different.
a 3-carat ring and I've got a deck of cards.
Yeah, totally different feel. So you're never going to mistake one for another or be fumbling to find it. And then, you know, the pens are both up here, but it's obvious which one is which, right? And the cards back be there too, and the invisible deck. That's all on this side.
That's all here, invisible deck, card, and the two.
So that's probably the bulkiest thing, but it's the easiest one to deal with.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so take us through the very first trick, mechanically, how all of the steps go.
All right. Do you have a $20 bill I can buy?
I do, as a matter of fact. Strangely enough, I came prepared.
And I just have the person on the back. I just have them write their name.
Yep.
So I try to make it nice and big so that they can see it, and so it matches the one I have in the thumb tip.
Now, this is one of those brush markers, so
Yes.
it makes a really bold line.
Yeah.
And also bright. So it can be seen from a distance, and it's identifiable right away.
As soon as you see that pink,
Yeah.
you can use green, anything, but black, like a regular black Sharpie, it doesn't read to a crowd.
Yeah. All right, cool.
So I like the brush tip too because it makes real wide letters. So the first thing I'm going to do is a bill switch, and the thing I really hate about the bill switch is there's always that point in the bill switch where you see this.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what you don't want to see. So from studying Kozlowski's bill switch and just Michael Lamar and Lance Pierce and, everybody has their version of the bill switch. Mine is just a conglomeration of all of these. So keeping the bill in sight is important. And you'll notice you get a little bleed through from that brush marker too, which is really nice. So they can tell no matter what side, you can see the name. So now I come and I fold this way, right? And that's pretty standard. And then my middle fingers kind of come behind, and my forefingers stay in the middle there, and I just kind of fold into a V, and that makes your second fold of the bill switch, and then you crease that. Then I'm going in half this way, right? Now, notice everything stayed in full view. Then I push this thumb across and take over, and that is held here, but by the second finger here.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people, when they make that third fold across, that's when they steal the thumb tip. But you just do the fold and then the tip afterwards.
I do the fold and the tip afterwards. Yep. So the bill stays in view. We haven't lost it yet. Now, there are two ways to go here. And it depends on, how I feel. But you can do the same type of move where you squeeze here and fold up, right? That's good. But typically my go-to is to fold down and then put my thumb on the other side and turn the bill this way and show it
With a gesture.
with a gesture. That it hasn't left your sight, and it hasn't. Now I come straight back down. My finger immediately goes into this corner and opens it up, and it really has never left their sight. Now here's the thing, the moment where it all goes off the rails, right? And most people, do this weird thing. What I decided to do was take over with my thumb here and push the bill this way. So now that acts as a little ledge. So now I can put that right in there. It hasn't left anyone's sight. My fingers can go in and open it across the thumb tip.
And it goes on gently. It doesn't have to go all the way on.
It doesn't even have to go on your finger. It's just kind of sitting right there. Okay, it's not even pushed on yet. In fact, I don't push it all the way on until later. So I open this, and now I give it a little further push to get it on.
Yeah.
And then once it's open like this, then I can show my name, and I can tighten it up if I need to.
Yeah.
So that's the bill switch. And then I'm going to say, now, remember, would you be impressed if this had your name on the back of it? In fact, go ahead. And people can't tell if I keep this in motion what it says. They just see the orange.
Yeah.
So I say, tell everybody, what does that say on there? And he says, my name. And people go, wow, that's great. Yeah. And you go, no, it just says my name. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the first piece of magic.
Yeah, so you get a really nice, very magical moment, and then it's kind of turns into a joke, but remains magical.
But
the whole
remains
time.
magical.
Now, before we move on to anything else, let's talk about preparing the bill for the bill switch, which is actually super easy because it's basically the same thing as doing the bill switch.
Same thing
right?
as doing the bill
So
switch.
I'll take the 20 back.
There you
so
go.
that people don't get confused,
Right.
and then you just show them how they set that bill up in the thumb tip.
Okay, so you're going to hold it just like this. Same kind of fold. You fold it across, fold it up, fold it over, fold it up. So that the side here, the fold is at the bottom, and it just goes into the thumb tip like that.
Yep. And so it'll absolutely automatically be in the right position for the switch. Let's do the switch real time from the front, just like we did in the show.
Sure. So you're going to fold it in half. Then you're going to fold it up. And I'm talking all through this, and I'm saying, it's an origami fold. I learned it from my uncle who lives in the Philippines. He's a manila folder, right? So now we see it, and they start to see it changing. Come down in here, open it. The bill still has not left their sight. I tap it on just a little, open it up. Good, and there it is. And now I kind of finish pushing it on my finger.
Yeah. And just to mention that one of the things that is important is that when there's a process to what you're doing, which this is, it's a process of folding and unfolding. That's all that's happening. It's usually a good idea to have something interesting to say.
Say while you're doing it.
Yes, yeah, which is the reason for all the jokes and the references and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. All right, well, that's great. And then where do we go from here?
From here, we get the joke, and then while I'm talking about this, my hand goes into my pocket, and in my pocket.
You want to stand up to do this?
I was going to do it on the table here, so you can see what I'm doing in my pocket.
Okay, all right.
But so my hand goes into my pocket, and we'll pretend that this is my pocket right here. So we're looking into my pocket. The orange is sitting upright in my pocket. Okay, so what I do is I slip off the thumb tip and let it just fall into my pocket, and against my thigh, I'm pressing the bill.
So, all right. Is there going to be a resistance here? Because I'll just be the bottom of the pocket.
You can be the bottom of the pocket, yeah. So I just press this against my thigh, and I just get it folded in half.
Sure. You fold it
Right?
again to make it a little tighter.
To make it into a little packet.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm just using my thigh to give that one extra crease. Okay, and you'll be able to feel how you can put your finger right in the center and then just kind of squeeze and press it against your thigh.
Now, let me just ask you. So, what is going on for the audience at this time? What's happening for them?
For them, while your hand goes into your pocket, you're saying, now, would you be impressed if your name was on the back of here? Right. And everybody's looking and trying to see. They don't know what you're doing. They're looking at this. And then you walk up to the guy and you have him read it. So you have all this time to fold the bill in half because all the focus is here. So while all that focus is there, you're just that's against the bottom of your pocket. You just push that in.
And all the way home.
All the way home, just like that.
Yep.
And then
that's going to stay there for a while.
That's going to stay there for a while. Just going to live there.
Yeah.
Yep. And as you can see, it kind of seals up very nicely, right? So it looks pretty clean, right?
Yeah.
I made that cut a little long, but If it didn't make that so long, you wouldn't even notice.
Yeah, it still works.
So now that's in my pocket, sitting there, ready to go. Okay. The thumb tip is now out of play. It just sits in
Also
the pocket.
in the pocket.
Also in the pocket. And
Here, I'll clear this out.
Okay, great.
I'll put it over here.
So now I take this and I crumple it up into a ball, and we get ready to go.
And you want to crumple that relatively loosely, so it's
relatively loose. Yeah, so it matches your other one in your pocket.
Yep.
So there it is. Okay.
Awesome.
Now we're going to go into the chop cup. Okay. So what I do is I like to hand out the props and have them examined. I say, look at the knife, make sure that's a real knife, make sure that's a real cup. While they're looking at the props, I'm going into my right jacket pocket to take out the duplicate bill. Okay. Right. And then when I retrieve the cup back from them, I just kind of drop the bill into the cup and let it seat itself on the magnet, which it has. Okay. And like I said, if I'm doing this act, if I do it at a restaurant, at a table, sometimes, like I said, don't even use the chop cup. Sometimes won't even use a bill. Sometimes I'll use a napkin and do it. But for this version, I like it because you're using the money, you're involving it,
and that's a great point, especially at restaurants when you're doing table hopping. I think it's important to get the money out.
Yeah. As soon as you're going to want to get a tip. If you're doing this at a restaurant, you're going for that 20.
Yeah, for sure.
So I load that in there. So now it's a very simple matter of showing the cup, and you set it down, and you can set the cup down. I based on how strong your chop cup is, if you want to use this, just test it. Add more napkin, less napkin, more napkin, less napkin around your magnet, and you'll get just that right tension to release the bill. So that's released, that goes there, and then I just do a false transfer, pretending to put it in my hand, tap.
Use the knife as the wand for
cover. And it's gone, and it's back. And now we do a typical chop cup load, right, where I'm setting it down, right, and then I'm vanishing it again, and I'm giving the person the power. You have the power. Tap my hand, tap the cup, and then I show it, and then this gets deposited right back up in there into the magnet. Yeah. So now I'm going to say, I ask a lady to help me, and I say, we're going to do this, and there's a couple jokes here about the pyramids, and you can watch all that. I also do the thing with the this move,
and it's while that's in there,
and it's while that's in place.
Which I think is it's great.
Nobody, and then I say, I cut myself 4 times doing this. It's just I'll just saying stuff.
Yeah, and bits of business, gags, and all this kind of stuff. It's so important because if you can get the audience responding over and over and over again, and especially in restaurant work, everybody else is looking at the table. This table's laughing. What's going on?
Having
over
a great
there?
time. Yeah. So this move is very nice. We've got that loaded up in here.
You're going to put it into somebody's hand.
Right.
This, I wanted to ask you about specifically when I saw the performance. I've never seen anybody do this.
Right.
Now, is this your innovation to it? Because it is brilliant.
Thanks.
This is one of those things that no matter what chop cup routine you're doing, if you're not doing this,
you're missing it.
You're missing it. You're missing a beat.
Yeah, I came up with that at Barry's Magic Shop many years ago when I worked there.
It's so good.
So you're going to squeeze the cup with your fingers and thumb, and I always have them take their other finger and put it on top because if I hit this and that finger's not there, sometimes we learned that the hard way, didn't we? Yeah, right. So again, it's another false transfer, and I say I'm going to pass it up through here. Sometimes I'll say, but first I have to make a slight incision in your hand, which is kind of funny. And then just that pressure of when you hit up,
and it just appears there. It just feels so good.
It feels like it falls in your hand. It's one of those.
Yeah, how is that possible? I love it. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So then I set that down on the table. I've got my other one here, which I did my false transfer. So I just let that roll up into the cup and set it over there. And now I'm ready for the 2 balls joke thing. Sure. Yeah. So while I'm revealing this, I'm going into my pocket to steal this.
Okay.
And I just lean forward. My hand goes naturally to my pocket. And as I'm talking, I say, and that's what that joke is for. I say, I was doing this for a lady last week, and I turned my body this way, and that gives me an excuse to go into my pocket and pull out the fruit and just be ready for it at my hip. I just kind of have it right here, right, just hiding right back there. You have 2 balls, and I do, and I lift, and everybody sees the 2 balls, and that just goes right here, and the fruit rolls up inside.
Yeah. Now I noticed that you have studied the tap technique before the load.
Yes, the Don Allen. Yeah,
it's the Don Allen. Yeah.
Don Allen really goes.
You learned. We had talked about this earlier that you learned chop cup originally from Don Allen's routine, word for word, move for move,
right?
Right, and then turned it into your own kind of a thing. And that is one of the things that I think has been lost a little bit is that little extra tap. before the load.
Yeah,
You know,
it's nice.
and it is nice because it gives the finality to that moment.
I'm done.
Right. So
But
so
you're not done.
yeah. So go ahead and do that again.
So,
So
yeah,
that
I have 2 balls, right? And now it's loaded. And like you said, that puts a nice period on the end of it. They think the trick's over.
Yep.
That moment's over anyway. And I've just loaded the lemon or the orange. So now I put that down. These 2 go back into my pocket. Okay. And as another conversational thing, you know, a lot of people over the years have figured out that there are 2 balls involved in the trick. While that's happening, and you can get a shot of this from this camera over here, my finger is just kind of going into my back pocket and hooking the lemon and bringing it up right out of my pocket. Okay? And I'm just holding it by my side. Okay? And then I say the lemon, so I say the 2 balls involved in the trick. What I can't figure out is where does that one come from?
Yep.
Tap again, and then put it down there. And sometimes I'll just set that on top. Sometimes I'll leave it there. And then you just reveal the next item, and that just drives them nuts.
Yeah. Now there's a certain feeling. There's a certain tempo. There's a certain amount of delay that feels right for that second revelation, right?
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it just that you want to leave it linger as long as you can, but not so long that people forget the idea of the trick?
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly right.
You want this time in between
Yeah.
where they think what they saw is that come off of an orange and be set there,
yeah.
and then it just sits there.
It just sits there. Yeah.
And then when you're ready, bam,
Then
you hit
you
them with
reveal the
that.
second
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And there's that time that you just feel. It's just the right timing. You know, you say, there it is, boom, and now you set it down, and then you can tell because they'll either applaud or react, and just as you're starting to lose that response, well, then where the hell did that come from?
Yeah. and then it just goes up, right?
And it pushes it back again. Yeah. And like I said, you could do this sitting at a table, or like I did the other night, I did it more as a formal stand-up presentation of close-up magic. So then there you are. And then I always loved this at the restaurant because it was like, well, now let me cut the fruit open. Well, why am I going to cut the fruit open? Because I don't want to tip the fact that anything's in there.
Yeah.
So what I had come up with was I said, you know what? People always say this must be phony fruit, right?
Yeah, I love that because
that's phony fruit. And I put that one away, and I say, but look, smell that. That smells like an orange, right? In fact, I'll show you. It's real, and it's real, and that gives you the reason to cut it open, right? So now you would cut in, and you can. Sometimes, depending on timing, I'll do this myself, but I always think it's better if the spectator does it, guided by you, of course. And then I have them cut around the circumference, and the spectator, because you've got the star trap in here, the spectator can handle it pretty freely. And when they open it and they see that 20 in there, that just drives them nuts, you know. And they take it out, and then to clean this up, I let him open it and show the process. When I would do it at a restaurant, I would open it myself. I'd be very clear and but on stage, I'll let the spectator open it and be more hands off because it doesn't look like you can switch it or change it or anything. So, but then that's given back to the spectator, and immediately I take those and put them in there, and that goes off to the side.
Yeah. Now that whole sequence is composed of 3 tricks that actually, when we talk about it, 3 tricks that are put together that become an entire routine from start to finish. Like they feel all coherent and all together at that point, and it's it makes perfect sense. Each of the things builds on the things before it.
And the first part of this first section from the Bill Switch to the ending of the Chop Cup is an act in itself.
That's right, and that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Because when you are working walk around magic, you just never know how much time you have, and this is opening with something so strong that you could get through this like that, right? And get to this moment, and then you can move on if you have to.
Yep.
And it stands on its own as a really, really nice piece that gets the money out on the table, gets people's interest. I didn't even mention when you were doing the Chop Cup, but instead of just using the balls, you're using something that actually is more organic and in the moment that then leads further and further.
Yeah.
Plus, it keeps their interest because they're not gonna
They're not gonna walk
they're
away
not
with
gonna
it.
send you away.
Right.
You know,
Until that comes back.
Until that 20 comes back.
I would do this when I worked for Bill Malone at his bar in Florida back in 90 something something. I would do this a dozen times a night,
Yeah.
as a set, and every time I got the money.
Yeah. So before we move on, let's talk about this. You've got to reset an orange. So if you're doing this a dozen times a night, which I think is great, I think it's really important to think about doing something that's so unusual and impossible for people that if it doesn't take too much effort, it's worth doing it. You know.
And I used to do it where I would tear a corner off of every bill, and I'd put it in there, and I'd set up 12 of them. It's like,
Oh yeah.
and then I would do the serial number, and I would, and then eventually, because of necessity, I was like, let me see if I can figure out a way to actually shove
A better
that
way
in
to get
there.
it in there.
Yeah, and then that's what that evolved.
Yeah. So when you're done with this and the whole act, you know, in a restaurant you could probably just leave the orange there, but do you? Because it's not really examinable.
No, I
You
will.
would always take it with you.
I would at a restaurant. It would go actually into this pocket.
Okay.
I would just put it away, right, to get it out of sight.
Yeah. And then you go away from that table. And you
I would
just
throw
toss
that in the trash. Grab another orange.
grab another
put
one,
it back
and
in my
the oranges would all just be prepared
Yeah.
with the cuts and the.
Yeah,
and
I'd
the
set
whole-
up 6 of them for the first half of the night,
Yep.
and then if I knew I was going to do more, halfway through the evening, I'd set up 6 more.
Yeah, sounds good. And maybe for those of you that are concerned with conservation of things, you could have a juicer in the back and just toss them in that.
Yeah, toss them in the juicer, make yourself some orange juice.
If that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a fantastic opening. Like you said, an act in itself. Where do you go from here?
From there,
So I get the money back.
you can have the money.
Yes.
Yes.
And something that I always like to mention whenever the bill appears in something, the reason that it's good to use a citrus fruit is that this will eventually just dry out and be really, really nice.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Most people think it's kind of gross and messy, but it's not. It actually feels good, and it feels it's all right on your fingers and all that kind of stuff.
And for the restaurant folks, if you are doing this in a restaurant, and like I said, my origins were there with this act, I would pick up a napkin or a serviette, and when I gave this back to them, I would rub it against the napkin twice, back and forth, and then I would say, you know what, I'd like you to have this as a souvenir. And by offering to give it back to them at that moment, they would say, no, man, you keep it. That was awesome.
Yeah. So it's a great way to get the tip. I'm not giving you this. Okay.
All right. So then I would go into Invisible Deck.
All right. Cool.
And I would say,